Welcome to our channel. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe.
Scooby-Doo and the Opera Ogre. Shaggy and Scooby-Doo had been singing during the entire drive to the Coolsville Opera House. "My ears are burning," Daphne complained about their off-key harmonizing. "Thankfully, we're almost there." When the Mystery Machine pulled up to the fancy theater, the gang saw people running away. The opera house was on fire. Smoke was all around them. "What's going on here?" Velma asked. "Oh, it's terrible!" cried Mr. Samuels, the owner of the opera house. "Our entire production is ruined." Mr. Samuels described what had happened. "The audience was enjoying our debut production of the Viking voyage when all of a sudden a strange creature swung down from the rafters. He was carrying a fiery torch. Before we knew it, there was smoke everywhere, and everyone ran for the exits in a panic." "Is everyone okay?" asked Velma. "I think so," replied Mr. Samuels, "except for one person. The star of the opera, Paul Noble. He's missing." William Bluster, one of the singers in the production, approached Mr. Samuels. "Don't worry, Samuels. I can play the lead part for you. Paul Noble is probably hiding somewhere, scared out of his wits. He's such a coward." Just then, the firefighters came out of the opera house looking puzzled. There was no fire, they told Mr. Samuels. Just lots and lots of smoke. "Do you mind if we take a look inside?" Fred asked. "We're pretty good at solving mysteries like this." Mr. Samuels was glad for the help, so the gang went inside, eager to find the cause of all the trouble. Just as they entered the theater, a creepy shadow appeared on stage. "Stay away!" the shadow screamed. "Beware the wrath of the Opera Ogre!" "Zoinks!" Shaggy cried. He and Scooby were so scared that they jumped into the orchestra pit. Shaggy landed head first inside a big tuba. "Like, help! I'm blind!" Shaggy hollered. "Stop fooling around, you two," Velma chided. Then something strange happened. As Scooby looked up at the gang, he felt the floor of the orchestra pit moving underneath him. "Ruh-roh!" he exclaimed. The orchestra pit worked just like a big elevator. It took Shaggy and Scooby down to a dark place under the stage, where costumes and props were kept. "Like, wow, Scoob," Shaggy said. "Let's look around." "Ruh-ruh!" Scooby shook his head. "Rich roo-rookie." "Too spooky?" Shaggy exclaimed. "No way, Scoob. Look, there are the dressing rooms. I'll bet the performers get all sorts of goodies, like boxes of chocolates." "Rocklets?" Scooby changed his mind. "Let's roll!" Shaggy and Scooby went into the dressing room with a gold star on the door. It belonged to Paul Noble. "Groovy, Scoob!" Scooby couldn't agree more. He sat at the makeup table and pretended he was a famous stage actor. He laughed at his reflection. "Like, let's see what's in the closet," Shaggy said. Something was hiding in there. It growled and reached for Shaggy. "Zoinks! It's a mummy!" Shaggy shouted. Meanwhile, Fred, Daphne, and Velma were exploring the area to the side of the stage. "See these ropes?" Daphne asked. "They're used to raise and lower the scenery." They were so busy looking around that they didn't see the creepy shadow of the opera ogre behind them. Kaboom! There was a fiery explosion, and then out jumped the opera ogre. "So, you have intruded on my domain, despite my warnings," the ogre said, his eyes glittering. "Now you must face my wrath!" "Jinkies!" Velma exclaimed. "Let's get out of here!" Fred, Daphne, and Velma ran as fast as they could. But before they got away, the ogre bellowed, "Fire burn! and cauldron bubble! Bring forth my Viking warriors on the double! They tried to get away, but were surrounded by ghost-like Vikings. Jeepers! Daphne shuddered. This brings new meaning to the phrase stage fright. There's something odd about these Vikings, Velma remarked, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Velma sounded brave, but it was hard not to shiver as the Viking army crept closer. The mummy chased Shaggy and Scooby down a long hallway and into another dressing room. Thinking fast, Scooby-Doo defended himself with the first thing he saw, a flower pot. Scooby stunned the mummy long enough to push him right down the laundry chute. Like, make sure you use plenty of starch, Shaggy called down after him. Scooby got a big laugh out of that. Then he caught a glimpse of something exciting in the next room. Rook Raggy! It was the costume room. Shaggy and Scooby couldn't resist trying on costumes of kings, soldiers, cowboys, princesses, witches, and vampires. Like, we sure could have used disguises like these on some of our adventures, Shaggy said as he dressed up as a princess. Right, Scoob? Scooby pranced around like a Roman general in battle. Meanwhile, Fred, Daphne, and Velma were still surrounded. Said Velma. Those Vikings haven't moved any closer. And the opera ogre has disappeared, Daphne added. Look at these strings, exclaimed Fred. These Vikings aren't ghosts. They're just big puppets. Come on, guys. Fred headed off stage. Let's see if we can catch that opera ogre before he causes any more trouble. Fred, Velma, and Daphne searched the theater's dressing room. Daphne found a picture of the opera's star, Paul Noble. Someone had given him whiskers and made his tongue stick out. Boy, someone sure doesn't like Paul Noble, she commented. Look at this. It could be a clue, Velma exclaimed. She held a container filled with smoke-making fluid used for special effects. And I found these long strips of canvas, Fred frowned. What are these doing in the actor's dressing room? Shaggy and Scooby had run into an ogre of a problem. Right in the middle of their play acting, the opera ogre leaped into the costume room with a loud laugh. Flee now, or feel the wrath of the opera ogre! Zoinks! No need for wrathing today, Mr. Creepy, Shaggy cried. We're fleeing! We're fleeing! Scooby and Shaggy ran out to an area overlooking the stage. They came to a circular staircase used by the stage crew, and up they climbed. At the top of the staircase was a dead end, and the ogre was right behind them. Like, only one way to go, Scoob! Shaggy pointed to a scenery pole hanging over the stage. We'll be better off hanging on than hanging around here. Come on! Ruh-roh, Scooby said and leaped onto the pole after Shaggy. But as the ogre reached the top, he grinned and cut the support rope that held up the pole. Shaggy and Scooby were lucky. They fell right into a huge sail of the Viking boat and were sliding down safely toward the bottom. Now that's more like it, cheered Shaggy. Rah! Rah! Scooby nodded happily. But just when they thought they were going to get away... Zoinks! Shaggy exclaimed. It's that funky mummy at the bottom of the sail, and we're headed right for it! Daphne, Fred, and Velma heard the commotion on stage and ran to see what was happening. Look, Velma pointed. There's a mummy chasing Shaggy and Scooby. Let's help them, Fred said. They started toward Shaggy and Scooby, but before they could get very far, the opera ogre cut loose heavy sandbags overhead, trying to stop the gang. Jeepers, this is dangerous, Daphne cried. The mummy chased Shaggy and Scooby into the scenery shop behind the stage. Crash! Shaggy ran into some old paint cans. Smash! Scooby skidded into a stack of lumber. They were so busy running into things that they didn't realize the mummy was as clumsy as they were. Bash! The mummy ran straight into a post. Dodging the falling sandbags, the rest of the gang joined Shaggy and Scooby in the scenery shop. Jinkies! What's all the noise in here? Velma wondered. Like that crazy mummy is trying to grab us and put one of its creepy curses on us, Shaggy said. Yeah, reapy verses, Scooby nodded. Well, I don't think this mummy can do much to you guys right now, Fred said. Looks like it's out cold. Just then, Velma found a clue. Hey, look! This isn't a real torch at all. It's just a prop made from cellophane and wood, with a tiny light and fan inside. And this is an artificial smoke machine, Fred said. I think I know what's been going on here. The gang began to realize that everything was not what it seemed. Shaggy and Scooby found out the hard way when they bit into some turkey legs made out of painted foam. Well, two can play at this game, Fred said. Listen, gang, I've got an idea. A short time later, Shaggy and Scooby were back on stage. They were pretending to be Romeo and Juliet. I sure hope this works, Romeo, Shaggy said in his best opera voice. Scooby sang back. Just then, the opera ogre appeared, swinging down to get them, just like they planned. You can't escape me now, growled the ogre. Zoinks! That's our cue, Scoob, Shaggy yelled. Like, let's get out of here! The opera ogre chased Shaggy and Scooby off the stage and down one of the hallways. Relp! Relp! Scooby cried. Like, just keep running, Scoob! If we stop, he'll get us! Just when it looked like the ogre was going to nab them for sure, Shaggy and Scooby veered suddenly to one side. Before the ogre could change direction, he smashed through a canvas wall, painted to look like the hallway. Fred dropped a rope onto the ogre and tied him up tight. Like, that's one snazzy special effect, Shaggy laughed. Scooby agreed. Now let's see who this opera ogre really is. Fred ripped off the ogre's mask. It's that actor, William Bluster. And the mummy is the missing star, Paul Noble, Daphne exclaimed. He wasn't trying to get us. He just wanted us to untie him. I'll bet Bluster was the one who tied him up, Velma added. Yeah, and with Paul Noble out of the way, they would have let me play his part, growled William Bluster. The plan would have worked, too, if it weren't for you nosy kids. And your dog. Just then, Mr. Samuels ran in with the police to take Bluster away. Thanks for solving the mystery, kids, Mr. Samuels said. What can I do to repay you? Well, there is one thing. Shaggy smiled at Scooby. Rah, rah, said Scooby excitedly. Later, the audience was back in their seats. The opera began with Paul Noble in the lead, just where he belonged. Only now, there were two new Vikings, Scooby and Shaggy. Like, this is the grooviest reward of all, Shaggy said. Even in the last row, you could hear Scooby loud and clear when he sang out, Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
Thank you for watching our videos. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe. Here are some videos we thought you might like.